All right, everyone, let's get started. First and foremost, thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar on overcoming objections to AR. Based on the number of registrants and the pace with which you signed up, we know this topic is one of great interest, and we're constantly being challenged to help our clients with this as well. So we're really excited about sharing some of the techniques we've found successful in overcoming the most common AR objections. So by way of introductions, my name is Christina Neal. I'm a strategist here at Spotlight. So in the simplest terms, that means it's my responsibility to collect the best ways that we do AR, to codify that into a methodology, and then to train that methodology to our employees as well as our clients. Also with me today is Andrew Shu.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Andrew Shu. I am a co-founder and managing partner here at Spotlight. So happy to be here.
Great. Well, before we jump in, I thought it would be helpful to give just a quick intro into Spotlight. So Spotlight is a dedicated analyst relations firm. We've been in business for about 7 years now, and over those 7 years, we've had the pleasure of running hundreds of AR programs, executing tens of thousands of interactions with analysts, and managing hundreds of magic quadrants and waves on behalf of our clients annually. So we wanted to have webinars where we could share the things that we've learned. So last year, we actually put on an entire webinar series on getting better together. And as part of that series, we surveyed and interviewed AR pros. What we found was the #1 challenge that AR pros are faced with fall under the category of evangelizing AR. So that's things like proving AR value, gaining executive support and budget, and overcoming AR objections. So that's what we're going to talk about today, right? But the thing that we found really interesting, the thing that AR pros do the most is AR, unsurprisingly, right? But the thing that we worry about the most is defending AR. It's fascinating to think about, right? I don't believe our friends in accounting wake up in the morning having to defend accounting, or even HR having to defend HR. So there's definitely something unique about what we do. So Andrew, in preparation for this webinar, you and I talked about this challenge. Why do you think this is unique to AR?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it comes down to the fact that we work in a really, really niche field, right? So the understanding of analyst relations as a practice, what can it do for a business, why we do things that we do, all of that understanding is spotty at best. Different executives have had different experiences with analysts in the past. So the belief in the channel is wide-ranging, right? It goes from all the way from yay all the way to nay. So this lack of understanding and buy-in means that every time one of our stakeholders runs into an obstacle or a setback, that frustration can turn into skepticism and doubt, right? Which in turn manifests in all these different objections. So it's such an interesting thing. And it's so hard going to work with people constantly questioning the thing that you're doing and the value of it. So let's take a moment and talk about like what happens when we get this wrong, right? What is the cost of not having ready answers to objections? And I noticed the word ready. It is in, why is that ready word so important? It is in our experience that these objections almost never happen in a one-to-one setting. They happen in meetings, and there are almost always many stakeholders in those meetings. So when you're fighting an objection, you're not just answering that question for a single objector. What you're really doing is stemming the flow of doubt to the other attendees in the meeting. That's really, which is really, really important. So if in that meeting you miss the real-time opportunity to kill the doubt, it is much harder to do later. And that festering doubt is incredibly costly. So what does it cost? It costs, honestly, commitment, right? If you don't win the C-suite over, you'll struggle with organizational commitment. If we don't win over our partners in comms, you'll always be seen as a separate silo and not a critical component of firm-wide reputation management. And if you don't win over the people in product, you'll never be able to execute that finely integrated learn and earn strategy that we love. So lots of weight on our ability to overcome these objections. So in order to answer the question, how do we fight? We have to answer the question, what are we fighting for, right? First and foremost, what we're doing is we're fighting for attention and support from key stakeholders. We're fighting for that CEO to prioritize our executive briefing, right? Putting that first, making sure they give you the time prep. We're fighting for that product leader to polish up that roadmap and get that presentation ready. We're fighting for allies so that we don't have to defend this channel alone. So first and foremost, attention and support. Not surprisingly, budget and resources. We need the real dollars and the manpower in order to execute. The third one, probably a little bit less obvious, is that we're fighting for patience. Great analyst relations takes time. Time for the waves and magic quadrants to be updated, right? Refresh cycles, times for editorial cycles to complete, time to change minds. So we need that patience. And then finally, we're fighting for recognition. And not just recognition that we're doing a great job, that's really important, but really what we're doing is we're fighting for recognition that these analyst interactions have a real and positive impact on the business. It's that kind of recognition we're looking for.
So before we dive into specific arguments to counteract specific objections, I think it's helpful to take a moment and understand when and why these objections exist. So if you think about it, a critical factor to success in almost any endeavor is anticipation. We need to know when danger is lurking. Lucky for us, there are some telltale signs that objections are on the horizon. So the obvious one, poor placement in magic quadrants or waves, right? So the question that typically comes in from this is, should we even be participating? New leadership, right? As Andrew mentioned, executive experiences vary. We may have to explain and show value all over again. Anytime there's budget cuts or budget reviews, unfortunately, our line item typically comes under scrutiny, and leadership may not feel like we're making the momentum as quick as they would like, right? So we talked about how analyst relations takes time. It's that patience aspect. Most of the time, our timeline is not what leaders expect it to be. And the final one is actually something we often miss. When we don't prepare our executives for a positive interaction, they can leave that interaction with a bad taste in their mouth. And that singular moment can have them question the entire value of the channel. So when those moments occur, there's no shortage of the ways that they can object. So let's just cover a few common ones, right? Analysts are just pay to play. We are educating the analyst, not the other way around. Analysts don't have a perfect category for us. We aren't getting the ROI out of our investment. Our customers don't read Forrester and Gartner. And as you can imagine, there are so many more. We're just getting started. These are the ones that we hear the most, but I'm actually interested in hearing what you face. So as a spotlight collector of best practices, I would love to hear more. So if you would, in the chat Zoom feature, tell us the objections you've heard and if you've been able to overcome them. And hopefully at the end of the call, we have enough time to visit them during the Q&A time.
Yeah, thank you. Please do. We're always trying to find out the new ways that we have to overcome. So let's revisit a little bit about why the skepticism and doubt occurs and where these objections come from. Because we overanalyze everything here at Spotlight, all things analyst relations, what we've been doing is collecting different objections and we've been trying to understand them. We categorized the objections we found, and we found 4 major root causes that seem to be behind the majority of these objections. So what are they, right? So the first one is the deck is stacked against us. There's no chance to win this fight, right? This root cause is like hopelessness. I can't overcome this. There's no chance we can win this fight. Therefore, I object. The next root cause is I don't want to be judged by or take advice from someone I don't see as expert. This is a question of trust, right? I don't trust that the analyst is expert. I don't trust that the analyst can make the correct call. The next one is they will never see the world like we see the world, right? This is that incredible feeling of frustration. I keep telling them about what we see. I keep telling them that we're different. They just can't seem to see it. They just don't see it our way. And then finally, we aren't getting enough money's worth fast enough, right? This question of ROI, this question of value. So what we found is that these are the 4 major sort of root causes, categories, however we want to call this, of these of objections. On that last one, we aren't getting money's worth fast enough. We did a webinar last year, I think it's the last one of the year, on AR measurement. Inside that webinar, pardon me, inside the webinar, we spent a lot of time talking about ROI and how to show value. If you're interested in learning more about this last topic, about money's worth and value, please go to spotlightar.com, our website, and then click on the resources tab, and that'll give you a link to all the different webinars that we've done in the past. Also, you'll be able to see the thought leadership that we publish on an ongoing basis. So we're going to leave that last one alone, the value and ROI question. All we're going to do is focus on the first 3. What you've probably noticed is that the language we've chosen on these first 3 is incredibly soft. Words like hopelessness, frustration, trust, This is intentional. The reason why it's intentional is because when you're talking about a lack of understanding, you're really overcoming emotions, not logic. So yes, it's all about feelings, guys. It's always about feelings. Okay, so what does winning look like? Let's try to define what that is. It's not enough to give the objector a bunch of information about AR. We need them to feel a specific way, right? We're only successful if the objector actually believes that it's possible to be successful. If the objector actually believes that building a relationship with that analyst is worth their while. And if the objector believes and trusts that you have a plan for getting there, right? So that is, that's not an easy challenge. So what we want to do is like, how do we make arguments that push people this way? So how do we offer up these arguments, rebuttals, if you will, that get us closer to winning? So what we did, again, is we gathered up all the different arguments that we've tried at Spotlight. We analyzed them and we created a little checklist that describes the building blocks of our most successful attempts at changing minds. The first one that we discovered was that we have to debunk misunderstandings about AR. Any great rebuttal that we have has to debunk the factual misunderstandings. If your objector has a bad data on how the channel works, you have to fix that first before you can get to anything else. So the next thing, we have to reframe what success and momentum look like. For those people who aren't familiar with the channel, there's a regressive way of looking at AR, right? Underinformed stakeholders almost always try to ascribe success to just two things, right? They try to break it down to two things. They only care about whether we're in the leadership position on a wave or magic quadrant, or we're getting absolutely attributable direct leads from analysts. And if those aren't in those two categories, we don't care. We can't let that happen. We have to reframe what success looks like. And then finally, we have to show the path together, how to go forward. How do we do it together? How do we get there, right? You have to show a clear and distinct way of getting from A to B. So those are the three things that we found. Every great argument exhibit those. And let's go ahead and take a look at some samples.
Yeah, let's give that rebuttal checklist a spin. So we are going to talk through three of the most common ones that we have seen. So the first one is analysts are all pay to play, right? I'm sure this one sounds familiar to many of you. And it's really, the big guys are always in the upper right because they pay the most. So let's tackle that one. How do we approach that? Well, first, it's important to debunk the misunderstanding by educating. It's actually not the big guys are in the upper right because they pay the most. It's that they have the broadest offering and they offer the most proof of success. So analysts aren't rewarding spend, but they are rewarding experienced incumbents. So we know this to be true because even if we paid them $1 million, we cannot buy leadership and we cannot even buy renaming the category. So what can we do with money though? So what is true? We can spend money for access and time. So while it is true that you can participate without any spend, the spend on subscription allows for that time to share our strategy, time to hear their opinions, share ours, and the necessary time to adjust our products for that tightly integrated listen and learn strategy. Now, we know that it can take time to become a leader, so it's important that we help reframe what success looks like. So we need to think through steady momentum up and to the right, year over year. Also, we know that waves and magic quadrants are oftentimes evaluating apples and oranges on the same report, right? Vendors solving challenges in different ways. So what's important for us is to help leadership see that we need to measure ourselves against our true competitors, the other apples in the report. So revisiting building blocks, just for a second, for rebuttals, we debunked the misunderstanding of what money can buy, we outline a path forward, and we reframe what near-term success looks like for us.
Yeah, and that model, obviously being a little bit simplistic, right, regarding the arguments, but we found that those words and some different variation of them really do work, right? So let's take a look at the next one. The objection, the analyst isn't an expert. We run into this all the time, right? I don't think that the analyst is qualified to rank us against our competitors. And I'm using very, very friendly language here. You guys have probably heard the R-rated version of this on an ongoing basis. So let's talk about the rebuttal that the analyst isn't an expert. First and foremost, let's do some education, right? Analysts only learn what they can broadly observe in the market. Their expertise is an amalgamation of what they hear from vendors, customers, and partners. Said in just a more colloquial way, it is analysts only learn what they see. They only learn what they're told, right? They might not start as an expert, but they eventually become an expert over time. So how do they become an expert over time? People tell them things. What if we don't want to educate them? Well, we can't really, right? We can't cede our share of voice. We need to counteract what our competitors are saying and by sharing what we see and believe about the market, right? We want to go out, do that outreach and do that education. At the end of the day, the analyst is going to become an expert. We don't want that analyst to become an expert only in the vision of what they hear from our competitors. We want that analyst to become an expert by leveraging some of the experiences that we see. And then finally, so reframing what success looks like, even if that analyst isn't a ready expert at this moment in time, there's still so much we can learn from them, from their inquiries. What are our prospects asking, right? What exactly are the words that they're using to describe the challenge that they're actually trying to buy a solution for? And more often than not, those words that they're using with the analyst are not the words you're using in your outbound marketing. What products are they considering? Are they considering things and competitive products that are directly within your category? Or are they trying to solve that problem from even buying tools in adjacent categories? Who are the titles of the people making buying decisions? Where are they in the buying cycle? Are they just starting, or are they really starting to explore? So analyst isn't an expert? Of course they're not. They learn from what they tell. We have a responsibility to tell them what we see. And even during this period of time, there's no reason why we can't learn from them, right? So what is the rebuttal that the analyst isn't an expert? Let's go to the next one, right? The objection. The analyst doesn't see things our way. The analyst doesn't see the markets changing. The analyst can't see how we're different. I can't tell you how many different versions of this. They don't see how the market is changing. They don't realize that this is the most important problem. There's this constant frustration that when I say things over and over and over again, I say things I don't seem to get the analyst to actually acknowledge. So let's talk a little bit about the rebuttal. First and foremost, education. Every analyst is being bombarded with vendors that are making the same types of claims we are, if not exactly the same claims. Analysts have to wade through a bunch of noise. This kind of education, you'd think that it would be self-explanatory, but it's certainly not, right? Analysts are constantly being bombarded. We feel like we're really special, but all of you in the room, you've done competitive analysis. You all know that our claims really aren't that different. These words aren't that different. Our claim differentiators not that different, which means if we're asking the analyst to see the market in a completely different way, like what's the way forward, it takes repetition and time. If we're really serious about transforming our category and asking the analyst to look at things differently, we have to commit to tirelessly informing the analyst community as well as our target market. What we're setting the stage for here is that you actually have to commit to spending the time and effort and attention in order to get there. And you have to have patience for it. And then finally, what does success look like? How many of you on the call have heard this from one of your executives? Like analyst asks, right? Who are your competitors? Who do you compete with? And one of your execs goes, we have no direct competitors. We are a category of one. We are the first. Well, analysts will never create a category of one. So if that's what you think winning looks like, you're probably not going to be successful. If we intend on building a new category, we have to commit to bringing some of our competitors with us. We have to be able to describe the entirety of the ecosystem, who are the different alliance partners, the implementation folks, the technology people, who are all the different people making money in this category. We have to bring them all with us, and that's what success looks like. So, again, debunking, showing a way forward. So, right, all these different fundamental elements. So let's take a look at the tonality, right? Because what you probably notice is that there's a shared pragmatism to the way that we're making our arguments. My mom's way of saying it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So what we're doing here is we are addressing objections decisively, but we're also doing it patiently, right? We're not going to let this go, but we're also not going to be pushy about it. At the end of the day, not everybody knows everything about AR. I can't presume that knowledge. Let's give them the opportunity to learn. Let's be patient with that education. You also notice that we're fighting the urge to set unrealistic expectations. This is something that happens all the time, right? You come under fire in the middle of a room. They're like, are you going to be able to get this category done, into the leadership, change the quadrant, name it? Well, guess what? If you're under fire and you give in to setting unrealistic expectations, that's going to put you behind the eight ball a really, really long way before you get to the next, in order for you to be successful long term. Notice that we're never blindly and unrealistically loyal to our channel. we have to acknowledge that the frustration that your stakeholder and your objector is feeling is real. And the objection has a degree of merit, right? If you do not accept their pain, if you don't acknowledge it, you're never going to be successful overcoming that objection. And then finally, you'll notice that we're constantly highlighting a broad range of contributions from AR, right? What are the different ways it can add value? It's not just this or that. There's more things. I'm bringing remarkable insight that's adjusting our product. I'm providing an incredible quote to the sales team that they can put into the sales organizations. I'm giving them incredible commentary and visibility into the marketplace through citations. So as we talk about our objections, this tonality is also critical. So how do we, now that we've said a lot of words, right? What does that mean? I think that we need to tackle our worry head on, right? When I first started, we talked a little bit, Christina first set the stage, talked about the fact that it is the thing that we worry about the most. I think we should stop worrying about it. Defending, right? Worrying is a passive position. Rather than us defending analyst relations, let's take on a positive tone, right? Let's try to push forward and actively take on the responsibility that building understanding and enthusiasm for analyst relations, it is part of our jobs. Maybe we should put that into our job descriptions as well, right? We've got to push forward and actually acknowledge that this is our responsibility. Okay, so lots of words. These are some of the different techniques. Always hard to boil down such a big topic like overcoming AR objections into like just a 25-minute period of content. So we think we have time maybe to take a question or two, but before that, I'd like to just make a few announcements. So.
Yes, and this will give you that time to put some of those objections into Zoom. We've seen several come through, which has been fabulous, but if there's one that you haven't had a chance to, go ahead and throw that in and we'll try to address them. If we don't have a chance to address on the call, we'll try to follow up via email to close the loop so that we can address it. So first, at the end of this call, I mentioned you will be receiving a recording, but also you will be getting links to several of these announcements. The first one is about our upcoming webinar. So on April 17th, we're going to continue the series of Evangelizing AR by focusing specifically on showing AR momentum. We're going to share techniques on how to show and build momentum as well as measure that progress. So we hope you can all make it.
It's fantastic. Yes, please come. In late April, early May, the Gartner Marketing Symposium is coming up, and we're going to try something new. So we as AR people, we all know that going to these shows is incredibly stressful. And then when we get there, it's impossible for us to see enough content. If we don't get to see enough content, getting on that plane and trying to write out, what is it that I heard? What did we learn? What are the implications to analyst relations? And trying to write that email or write that POV on the airplane is incredibly difficult. So we want to try something new. There are going to be 5 of us from Spotlight that are going to go to the Gartner Marketing Symposium. We're going to break up and try to attend as much content as possible, and then we're going to try to synthesize those different takeaways. What did we see? What did we hear? What is it we think was important? And then what we'd like to do is get all of us together on that last day of the show. So Wednesday, May 1st, the show itself ends at 2:45. What we've done is rent an event space. I think it's a conference room in a hotel next door to the Gartner Symposium Hotel. From 3 to 5 p.m., let's all get together. What we'll do is we'll share what we see, what some of the key takeaways are, and then it'd be great for all of us to discuss what we found, what are the implications to analyst relations, right? And let's just do our homework together. And then hard work from 3 to 5. After 5 p.m., let's have a couple cocktails. So please, the invite will be in the email that goes out. Please join us.
Great. And one last announcement is something we're very excited about. We are publishing our first version of our peer review sites guide for analyst relations professionals. So this is going to take a close look specifically at peer insights. And we know this has been a very hot topic, and seemingly we're learning something new about it every single day. And while there are many resources and points of view out there about peer review sites, we wanted to gather everything we learned and share that information with you. So in this book, we explore why these sites are important, why they actually fall under the AR umbrella, and how you should consider managing this channel. So it's a pretty thorough read. The link will be in the email as well, so we would love it if you would download it. All right, so let's actually jump back into questions. So based on the time we have left, we only have a few minutes, so it looks like we could probably take 1 or 2. So let's pick this one. What if my leadership sees the Forrester analyst gets it, but the Gartner analyst doesn't? or vice versa?
Oh my God. That is an awesome first question. That hurts. Oh, the Forrester Gardner question. Okay, so let's talk about like debunking the myth and the understanding, right? The typical thing that happens is that our executives and our stakeholders, they typically attribute what they experience with one analyst, the totality of the firm, right? They go through and they say, Forrester's great, Gardner sucks. Gardner's great, Forrester sucks, and vice versa. And it's incredibly frustrating. I think it's important as you go through debunking, you have to educate your stakeholder and that the fact that these two analyst firms, they have some fundamental differences to them. So first and foremost, you take a look at Gartner, right? Gartner is a firm that's responsibility and mandate is to counsel their end user readers. That has primacy above all. Secondly, the thing that they are guaranteed to do, or what they commit to do, is they're in the business of describing, how should I say, they're backwards looking, right? They describe a market as it is. They're not in the business of essentially predicting the future. They're not about making a call about where the market should be. They'd have some prediction docs, but it's not their primacy. Forrester, on the other hand, they hold themselves to a different kind of time frame, right? They typically think that it's their responsibility to analyze the data available to them and make a strong, hard call about the future. So if you take a look at those two, a strong, hard, and not only that, but honestly, accurate and educated, those two mandates are different. Backwards looking in service of the end user, forward looking, probably focusing on market, right? Where's it going to go next? So if we don't put that into our headspace first, then we're never going to be able to create and bring the right arguments to the table. So anyways, talk about that, educate them on that, talk a little bit about how the arguments need to be different, that your payload needs to be different, and the way that you make your case inside the interactions is different. Do you have another one?
Yes, we have time for one more. Okay. So this one is, we don't need anyone but Gartner because they're the biggest.
Right. I think of that like in context of like addressable market, right? Yes, Gartner is fantastic. Gartner has the biggest amount of outbound sort of distribution, right? But at the end of the day, it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. Are you trying to be forward-looking? Are you trying to only describe what has happened in the past? Are you trying to make a new category, or are you trying to win inside your existing category? I think the first thing to debunking is to sit down and say, do I have my strategy right? Do I know what Gartner can accomplish for me? And do I know what Forrester can accomplish for me, IDC can accomplish for me? Or maybe I can go to some smaller analyst firm and I can find an opportunity or commission somebody to say exactly the right words. Is my intention maximum unsponsored distribution, or is my intention to go get specifically the right words into market? I think that kind of education has to come out, right? So Gartner is the only one that matters. You're like, that's one way to look at it, but let's look at what else we need to go do. And then the way you actually get there from A to B is different with each one of these different firms.
All right. So unfortunately, we don't have time for more questions because we are at the top of the time. But I want to thank everyone again for attending today's webinar. We hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and we hope to see you on April 17th. Thank you.